let's go to general nth powers. And we're going to call these the nth power operations. A good example of this might be if I said 2 to the 4th power. So we would read this as the number 2 to the 4th power. And some people like to say 2 to the 4th. It's another way to say that. And again, we're going to say that 2 is in the base, 4 is in the power. This operation counts multiplication. So we're going to multiply the number 2 by itself how many times? Well, it must be 4 times. Of course, 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. Times 2 is 16. 2 to the 4th is equal to 16. Let's take a look at the anatomy of an nth power. When I write x to the n, this is going to count the number of multiplications of the base by itself. Again, we're going to call the thing on the bottom there, we're going to call this the base. And the thing on the top there, we're going to call this the power. This is where I like to go back to my 2nd grade class and kind of yearn for back in the days when I was young. But some days I will sit at home and wish I was a kid again. You remember when we got to do this way back when, where you said that the small case letter was there, and then the thing up here was called a superscript? I don't know why it's called a superscript. Perhaps it has some sort of crazy power. But it's above that little line. Yeah, so we say that powers show up in the superscript, and then the bases show up below the little line in just normal typeface. When we see such an exponent notation, some people like to call this exponent notation. You could also call this power notation if you were really excited about life and math. In either case, though, that thing counts the number of times we're going to multiply the base. So if I say x to the nth power, that means I'm going to multiply the base x by itself, x multiplied by itself n times. Just some crazy notation, right? Out of all possible powers, the square is special. In other words, square powers are really famous. I'm talking about, like, I don't know, LeBron James famous. I'm not like not local famous. I mean, they're known a lot. And the reason that they're famous is that they show up in many contexts. And this is where, if you speak Spanish, you're going to have a leg up. So note, in Spanish, the word for square is cuadro, and some people also say cuadrado. But I'm going to say cuadro. So if you see a shape, a forma, where both the height and the width have the same side, we're going to call this a cuadro. And in English, for all you English speakers out there, that's, oh God, that's called a square. In this class, when you see the word quadratic, think square. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we actually spelled things right? But remember, this is freaking English, so the way things sound and the way things spell are very, very different, right? Stupid English. God darn it. So every time you see quadratic, quadratic sounds like quadro. Quadro is square. Square power. We're going to come back to that. But just remember, square powers, out of all possible powers we could choose, they're super famous. They're the ones we want to hang out with the most. In fact, they're so famous that they get their own name. They're called quadratics. Quadro is square. Quadratic is something involving a square power.